In 2013, a little girl walked toward her backyard fence and never came back. No scream, no broken latch, just the sound of a ball bouncing once, then silence. Her name was Lily, and 9 years later, when she walked back into my police station with nothing but a brass tag and a story I still can't explain, she brought something else with her, something I didn't know I'd buried too. Before I go any further, tell me in the comments where you're listening from, especially if a story like this ever brushed close to your own family or hometown. And if you haven't already, tap like and subscribe. Every click helps bring one more lost voice back into the light. My name's Laura Griffin. I've lived in Asheville, North Carolina all my life. I've worn the badge for 28 years now. These mountains, they don't give up secrets easy. But they remember. Back in 13, I was running early shifts, first one in every morning. I liked the quiet. You could smell the wet brick and old pine outside the station this time of year, late September, just before the leaves started to turn. Asheville always had that hush to it before sunrise. Felt like something sacred, or maybe just held back. Mornings always started the same burn the coffee check, the log glance at the corkboard. Most of the missing persons reports faded into each other. Runaways, lost hikers, the odd custody case. But there was one photo I never looked away from. Lily Harper, age 8, shoulder-length brown hair, blue eyes, chalk smeared on her shirt like she'd just been called in from recess. That picture was laminated and framed right in the center like a shrine. Some mornings it made me angry. Some mornings it made me sick. That day, it just made me quiet. I remember how normal it all seemed at first. Lily lived on the edge of town with her mom, Mara, and her older brother, Evan. Nothing unusual. Single mom worked nights at the hospital. Evan was in middle school, loud, restless, always slamming doors. Lily was different. Kept to herself mostly. Spent afternoons tracing chalk patterns on the driveway. Not hopscotch or flowers mazes. Big ones. Winding circles and dead ends and that strange little mark she always drew at the center. A circle with a line slashed through it. She said it meant the middle place. At school, she was quiet, barely raised her hand. Her teachers said she was sharp but sensitive. Flinched if anyone moved too fast or spoke too loud. Nothing that raised alarms. Not yet. I'd been to that house once or twice before Lily vanished. Once for a noise complaint. Once when the power company flagged a tripped meter. Each time Mara opened the door with a tight smile and tired eyes. Said she was managing. Said Evan was just going through a phase. I believed her. I think she believed herself. But looking back, there were signs. I remember the way Evan never looked directly at me. The way Lily never ran out to greet us like kids usually do when a cruiser shows up on their street. There was a dented beige pickup that came around every few months, parked 2 blocks down, never stayed long. I didn't think anything of it. The night before Lily disappeared, the forecast called for light rain. No wind, no lightning, no reason to worry. But when the call came in just after dusk, a child hadn't come in for dinner. There was something in Mara's voice that didn't sound like panic. It sounded like she already knew. I got in my cruiser, turned onto Sycamore Lane, and felt something shift. Not in the road. In me. And that's where part 1 ends. I pulled up to the Harper house just after dusk. The streetlights hadn't come on yet, and the whole cul-de-sac looked half asleep. Driveways, empty porch lights, flickering shadows stretching out longer than they should have. Mara met me on the front lawn, barefoot arms wrapped around her stomach like she was holding herself together. Evan stood near the porch steps, not moving, his eyes locked on the swing set in the backyard. The door was open behind them, screen slapping in the breeze. I remember thinking the quiet didn't feel right. Not panic, not disorder, just a kind of stunned stillness, like everything was paused. Mara's voice cracked as soon as she saw me. "She's not in the yard," she said. "She was just out here." I swear, I asked how long Lily had been missing. Mara shook her head too fast. 20 minutes. Maybe 30. I called her for dinner and she pointed toward the back fence. She was drawing again. Then she was just gone. I stepped through the house and out into the yard. It was small, fenced, typical for the neighborhood. A plastic ball rested near the edge of the driveway. Half a maze was chalked in pink along the concrete. There was a piece of popcorn near the porch stairs, slightly damp. I crouched down and touched it. Still soft. That's when I saw them. Lily's pink Converse side by side at the edge of the lawn, pointed toward the back. I looked at Mara. Did she take her shoes off when she played? She shook her head. Never. Said the grass felt weird. The yard was enclosed. No broken slats, no disturbed soil. Just silence. I radioed in a missing child, set the timeline. Within the hour, cruisers were pulling up from both ends of the block. By nightfall, we had a full unit searching the woods behind the property. Flashlights flickering between trees, dogs picking up nothing but leaves and mildew. I stayed with Mara while Janice Monroe, our county social worker, sat with Evan on the porch. He kept his hands tucked inside his sleeves, wouldn't look up, wouldn't speak unless someone asked him twice. When I offered him water, he said, "She doesn't like the woods." That was it. Just that one sentence. Then he clamped his mouth shut again. A storm rolled in around midnight. Light drizzle at first, then harder. I remember how the rain seemed to amplify the stillness, made every branch snap louder, made every shadow move. I went back into the yard. My boots slipped on the wet concrete. That's when I noticed something small and metallic tucked into the grass near the base of the fence. A loop of thin wire. A brass key tag darkened by moisture stamped with the number 43. I bagged it. I didn't know what it meant yet. None of us did. Mara collapsed 2 days later. She hadn't eaten, couldn't sleep, wouldn't speak unless she was sedated. Janice tried to place Evan with a relative, but no one came forward. Eventually, he was taken in by a neighbor across town. Mara stayed in the hospital for 3 weeks. I checked in every few days. She always asked if we'd found her shoes. Not her daughter, her shoes. I never corrected her. The days blurred after that. Interviews, news vans, flyers printed and stapled to every pole in Asheville. Lily's school photo became a constant fixture on gas station doors and diner counters. Her smile, lopsided gap-toothed, was etched into the town like a scar. I kept the brass tag on my desk, logged and sealed. But sometime around the 3rd week, it vanished from evidence. I asked Mike Rourke, one of the newer detectives, if he'd moved it. He hadn't. The log showed no sign out. The bag was just gone. I filed an internal inquiry, but there wasn't much else I could do. There wasn't much anyone could do. No signs of a break-in, no fingerprints, no footprints. It was as if Lily had evaporated, and without evidence, the leads dried up. The longer she was gone, the more people started to believe she'd wandered off. That she'd fallen into a ravine or gotten lost in the woods, that maybe she'd been taken by someone passing through. People wanted it to be clean. Tragic, but explainable. But I knew better. Nothing about that house or that yard or that evening felt explainable. Evan stopped talking at school, stopped turning in homework. He started getting into fights, mostly small ones, shoves in the hallway, slammed lockers. The teachers labeled him disruptive. No one said grieving. I pulled him aside one day and asked if he wanted to talk. He looked at me and said, "I still hear her at night." Then he walked off. We checked the backyard again and again, dug under porches, climbed into crawl spaces, interviewed neighbors. One woman 2 houses down said she remembered a man in a beige truck parked near the Harper home the day before Lily vanished. She didn't think anything of it at the time. Said he sat in the truck for almost an hour, engine off, just staring at the house. I asked Mara about it. Her hands shook. "That was Ray," she whispered. "My half-brother. He visits sometimes." She wouldn't say more. Ray Halden. That was the name she gave. No fixed address. No license on file. A few minor charges in Florida trespassing public intoxication. Nothing recent. Nothing violent. We tried to track him, but he'd vanished too. No phone, no employer, no forwarding address. By the 6th month, the case had gone still. The poster stayed up on the board, but the station moved on. New calls, new reports. Time passed. The Harper house started to decay in ways that felt quiet, but permanent. Mold around the window panes, paint flaking from the porch rails. A broken light fixture left hanging like a loose tooth. I drove by sometimes, not on purpose, just to check, just to see if the chalk was still there. It wasn't. Just runoff. A faint smear. 9 months in, I got a call about a fire 20 miles north of town. A hunter's cabin completely leveled. The blaze had started overnight. Cause undetermined. Inside, they found one body charred beyond recognition. No ID. Only a melted wristwatch and a pair of boots with partially intact soles. They were familiar. I didn't connect the dots until I got back to the station and pulled the photo from the day Lily vanished. One of the crime scene shots. Behind the fence, barely visible a shadow. Something wearing boots. Same tread pattern. Same style. I filed it. Labeled the fire accidental. Because that's what the report said. That's what the record demanded. But I kept that photo on my desk, and I never stopped staring at it. That was 2014. The year Lily Harper became the case I stopped talking about. The one that settled into my bones like cold weather. I didn't know it yet, but she wasn't gone. Not really. She was waiting. And when she came back, she didn't come with answers. She came with a number. And a story that started in a room with no windows, a vent in the ceiling, and a maze carved into the wall. It was just after 6 when the phone rang at the station once, then stopped. I was in the hallway finishing up a log entry, and something about the silence that followed made me stop moving. You get used to background noise in this line of work. Radios typing the uneven hum of the vending machine. When everything goes still at once, it presses in. I turned toward the front lobby and saw her. A girl standing outside the glass, soaked to the bone arms, hanging limp at her sides, not moving. Her hoodie clung to her like a second skin, maroon darker in patches where the rain had saturated the fabric. I didn't recognize her at first, just pale skin, matted hair eyes that looked through the door rather than at it. I opened it slowly, not sure what I was seeing. She stepped forward, reached into her pocket, and handed me a folded piece of paper. It was a black and white copy of a missing person poster, the one that had been pinned to our corkboard for nearly a decade. Lily Harper, age 8. Last seen October 3rd, 2013. The girl's voice was raspy, like it hadn't been used in years. "My name is Lily Harper," she said. "I think I was kidnapped. I didn't speak. I couldn't." Her face was older, sharper in places, softer in others. But her eyes, there was something in them I remembered. Not fear, not confusion, just a knowing stillness. I led her to interview room 3. She didn't resist. Sat down at the table and folded her hands neatly, like she was waiting for someone to take attendance. When I asked if she needed medical help, she didn't answer. When I asked where she'd been, she looked at the ceiling. She only spoke once, pulling something from the waistband of her jeans. A necklace made of bent wire, and at the end a small brass tag, stamped with the number 43. She placed it on the table without a word. When our evidence tech reached for it, her fingers twitched. She didn't stop him, but her shoulders locked up like she was bracing for something. I stepped out and called Janice, told her to come in. Then I rang Mike. By the time they got there, the rain had started again. Steady cold. I stood behind the glass watching the girl I couldn't say her name yet with Janice and Mike on either side of me. "That can't be her," Mike said. "She'd be 17 now. That girl looks older." Janice didn't blink. "We're younger," she said, like someone who didn't get to grow. At 6:41 a.m., I called Mara. She answered on the second ring. When I told her who I had in the station, she went silent. I thought the line had dropped. Then I heard her start to cry. By 7:10, she was in the parking lot, barely able to open her door. Her husband, who I hadn't met before, tried to hold her arm as she ran inside. She shook him off and nearly collapsed when she saw the girl through the glass. "That's her," she whispered. "That's my baby." But Lily didn't look up, didn't move. Her gaze stayed on her hands. Mara dropped to her knees, sobbing into her palms. No one said anything. I waited until the room was clear, then went back in alone. She looked up at me once, then at the badge on my chest, then at the mirror, then back to the table. "I was told not to talk," she said. "By who?" I asked. She paused. "He said it wasn't safe until he was dead." "Who?" Her voice softened, more memory than speech. "My uncle." I frowned. "You don't have an uncle." "You buried him 5 years ago," she said. I felt something cold move through me. The fire, the cabin, the boots. No ID, just a melted watch. It had been labeled accidental, presumed transient. But she was watching me now, studying my reaction. She wasn't guessing. She knew. "He called it the quiet house," she said. "There were others. I wasn't the only one." I stepped out and closed the door. My legs didn't feel steady. I walked past the evidence room and stopped in front of an old photo tacked on the back wall. One I hadn't looked at in years. The Harper backyard, police tape, a swing set, pink shoes in the grass, and there, just behind the fence, something blurred. A figure. Not quite human. Something standing. Boots visible. Same tread as the pair we'd found in the ashes. I went to the locker where we'd stored those boots. Opened it. Empty. No log. No note. Gone. I walked back to the interview room. Lily sat exactly as I'd left her. Eyes closed now, her hands resting flat on the table, palms down. The rain had picked up ticking against the windows. But it didn't feel like weather anymore. It felt like memory, like something long buried rising up all at once. I stayed quiet, waited. In that silence, something shifted in the air between us. And then she spoke again. "I don't remember the day I left," she said. "Not the way people think. No scream, no flash of light. It was quiet, like falling asleep underwater." She opened her eyes. "But I remember the week before." And just like that, the silence wasn't enough anymore. We had to listen, whether we were ready or not. She started slow, like someone remembering in pieces, not lines. I sat with her as the sky turned pale behind the windows, and the street outside stayed quiet, wrapped in that thin kind of fog that never really lifts. She said the week before she disappeared felt different. Not loud, not strange, just off. Lily used to draw mazes on the driveway every afternoon. Said she liked figuring out the way in more than the way out. She'd never finished one. Always left the center blank except for that odd symbol, a circle with a line through it. When I asked what it meant, she said it wasn't a symbol. It was the middle. That's what she called it. The middle place. She didn't know where the idea came from, just that it made sense. That was the week her mom started crying in the bathroom again behind running water. Lily could hear it through the wall. The pipes clicked in rhythm. She used to count them instead of sheep. Evan had started slamming doors more than usual. His voice had changed that summer deeper, but he still talked like a kid trying to sound older. He didn't talk to Lily much that week, barely looked at her. The morning of school picture day, Mara curled Lily's hair and fussed over her shirt like everything was fine. But Lily flinched when the photographer tried to fix her collar. He backed off, confused. She smiled for the picture, but only because someone told her to. That was the photo we used, the one we printed, the one I'd seen every day since. She remembered sitting on the porch the night before she vanished, knees tucked under her eating popcorn with her mother, listening to cicadas in the trees. Mara's hand stroked her hair, but without rhythm, like she wasn't really there. Then Mara said something out of nowhere. "I'm going to marry someone nice this time, someone who's not a coward." Lily didn't answer. She didn't know what coward meant, but she remembered the way Mara's voice cracked on the word. Her dad had been gone for months by then. No more shoes by the door. No more scent in the hallway. Lily had stopped asking where he went. The next day, Lily bit another girl at school, hard enough to leave a mark. No one knew why. Lily didn't either. She was sent home early. Mara told her she needed a reset. That evening, the light in the backyard felt wrong, too. Yellow, too quiet. That's when he showed up. Ray Halden, her mom's half-brother. He hadn't been around in a while. Drove an old beige truck with a dented bumper and a cracked side mirror. Always smelled like copper and gas. That day he brought her something. A necklace. Thin wire looped through a brass key tag. Number 43. Got it from a hotel once, he said. But I like to think it came from a room that doesn't exist anymore. Lily wore it. Not because she liked it, but because when he looked at her, it felt like he could see into her skin, like he already knew the parts of her that didn't have words yet. That night, she watched him argue with Mara in the kitchen, her mom's voice tight. Ray's too calm. "She's not yours to talk to like that," Mara snapped. "She's blood," Ray said. "And blood listens." Lily didn't sleep that night. The backyard gate banged open and shut with the wind. In the morning, she went back to her maze and kept drawing lines and turns, deeper paths, no center this time. Just movement. She remembered the sound of chalk scraping against the concrete. Then she was gone. She didn't remember how. Not clearly. She remembered the moment before the smell of cut grass, the weight of the necklace around her neck, a reflection in the fence that blinked and vanished. And then silence. Just a slow fading, like breath held too long. She told me she remembered the floor first. Cold. Not like a hospital or a basement, but something older. Stone, maybe, or damp concrete. She remembered the walls bare except for one thing. A maze, redrawn every morning. Different sometimes. Sometimes the same, always there. She remembered a tray sliding through a hatch. Food she never saw being made. She remembered the light, just one bulb above the door, always on, always humming, and a vent in the ceiling that whined like a mouth that wanted to speak but never could. She told me there was no clock, no way to mark time, but she started counting the drips in the pipe behind the wall. Every sixth drip had a longer pause. That became her hour. After every seventh hour, the maze would change. That was how she knew days were passing. She scratched marks into the underside of the bed, carved numbers into the corners of furniture, drew mazes in dust where no one thought to clean. She left pieces of herself in places too small to matter, until one day there was a sound, not from her room, from somewhere else. A scream. She didn't know who it was, only that it cracked something open in her. The next morning, the maze was different. Not painted this time. Scratched. Deep and jagged, like it had been done in a hurry. The food tray didn't come. The vent stopped humming. And then the door opened. Not fully. Just enough. A hand pushed her necklace inside. The same brass tag. Number 43. But this time it was warm. Like it had been in someone's palm. She didn't ask how she got out. Not yet. She said it wasn't about escape. It was about remembering. And about someone else. Someone she made a promise to. I looked at her, this girl who hadn't been a child in years, and asked, what kind of promise? She didn't answer. Just placed her hands on the table, palms down again, and whispered, I wasn't supposed to be the one who left. The lights in the hallway flickered then, just briefly. I looked up at the ceiling, then back at her. She hadn't moved, but I could feel it. Some part of the story was shifting. She'd opened the door. Now we had to walk through. I stayed late that night, later than I should have. Everyone else had gone home, but I couldn't bring myself to leave the building. Lily had gone quiet again, curled up on the interview room bench with her head resting against the cinder block wall. The brass tag number 43 sat in an evidence bag on my desk, catching the overhead light every time I moved. I picked it up, turned it over, ran my thumb across the edges. I don't know what I expected. It was just metal. But something about it felt heavier than it should have. I stared at it until my eyes blurred, then set it back down and reached for the case files from 2013. I opened the folder marked Halden Raymond. The original intake notes, witness statements, one photo of the beige truck, a list of visitors logged at the Harper house that fall. There should have been an envelope with the necklace tag from the day we bagged it. It wasn't there. The whole sleeve was missing. I checked the locker logs again. Still nothing. Then I checked the janitor's closet. I don't know why, just a feeling. Behind a stack of salt bags for the winter roads, I found our box labeled Halden. Open. Inside, half the contents had been shuffled or bent. A few pages were missing altogether, but one thing had been slipped in that didn't belong. A drawing. Maze-like. Childish at first glance, but in the center the same symbol Lily always used, a circle slashed through. I brought it into the interview room without a word. Lily was awake, staring straight ahead, blinking slow. I placed the page in front of her. She didn't flinch. Just looked at it for a while, then said, "I didn't draw this." I called Janice in the next morning. We sat across from each other in the back conference room with coffee that had gone cold before we even took a sip. I showed her the drawing. Her face changed. She didn't speak right away, just leaned closer, her fingers hovering over the lines. "I've seen this before," she said. Where I asked. "Foster home outside Mars Hill," she said. "Years ago. Boy in the system. Used to sketch these in the margins of his textbooks, always the same mark in the middle." I asked what happened to him. "He ran," she said. "They found him in a barn. He'd hung himself with a jump rope." Her voice got quiet. The note said, "The middle isn't asleep anymore." I didn't respond, just sat with it. A few hours later, I drove up to the fire site. It had been years, and most of the ash had washed away, but the old concrete slab was still there under a thicket of roots and blackberry vines. I cleared it back with my boot, looked for anything, found a small piece of brass wedged beneath a warped board, another tag. 44. I didn't tell Lily. Not yet. I needed to know more. I needed someone to confirm something without knowing what they were confirming. I called Evan. He was in college by then, out of state, trying to outrun everything his family had swallowed. He showed up the next afternoon, same hoodie from high school, same blank stare he'd had the year after she vanished. I watched him see her for the first time in almost a decade. He didn't say anything at first, just looked. Lily didn't move. Then he sat down and reached into his bag. Pulled out an old photo Halloween years back. She was a bat. He was a zombie fake blood on his collar. "I still have this," he said. Lily stared at it, then turned away. "There's something I should tell you," he said, his voice lower now. "I never told anyone. I stayed behind the glass with Janice. I saw someone," he said. "The night you went missing. I thought it was a shadow, but it moved. It was in the trees." He swallowed. "It had boots." Lily nodded just once, then looked away again. After Evan left, I started going back through the Harper case materials piece by piece. There was one old neighbor I hadn't re-interviewed, Mrs. Langley, 2 doors down. She was still in the same house, same front porch, same cane hanging from the rail. When I asked about Ray, she didn't hesitate. He watched the kids, she said. But not like a man watches children. Like a man watches his reflection. Another neighbor, Mr. Drew, remembered something else, a beige car parked out front that night. Not Ray's truck. Something older. He thought he'd mentioned it back then, but now he remembered the plate. We traced it to a motel outside Weaverville, long burned down. Teens had once broken in after the fire and found odd things, animal bones arranged in spirals, photographs with the faces scratched out, and a journal. That journal had disappeared from the archives years ago, but someone had scanned a page. I found it in a backup folder on the old station server. A single entry. Tight handwriting. Obsessive. They don't know where I am. They don't know what I've seen. But I am the middle, and the middle remembers. I brought it to Lily. She looked at it for a long time. Then she said, "That's his." "Ray's?" I asked. She shook her head. "No, I don't know his name, but he called the others by number." "What others?" 41. 42. Then me. 43. I asked how many more there were. She didn't answer right away. Just reached into her sleeve and pulled out a folded slip of paper. A list. Numbers. Dozens of them. Some crossed out, others circled. "I stopped counting after 60, she said. That's when I knew the fire hadn't been accidental. Someone had tried to erase something, and failed, because Lily was still here. But maybe someone else wasn't. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. I kept thinking about the way she said that number. 43. Not like it had been assigned. Like it had been worn. And then I thought about what comes after. About the next number. And the one after that. About how far the count might go. It was Evan who broke the silence first. I'd brought him back in a few days after the list of numbers. Lily was still quiet, still drawing invisible patterns on the table with her finger like she was tracking something only she could see. I sat Evan down beside her. Didn't say much, just watched. He didn't look at her right away. Kept his eyes on the corner of the room like he was afraid he might recognize too much if he looked straight at her. Then he said, "Do you remember the day Ray came by?" Lily didn't move. "He brought you that necklace. I remember that part. But he asked me to show him the basement." Her eyes flicked upward barely. "There's no basement," I said. "There is," Evan replied. "It's sealed concrete under the garage. My dad poured it before we moved in. I showed Ray the hatch once. He said it wasn't a real room, just a root cellar. But there was a ladder." Lily's face changed. Subtle, but I saw it. "I heard it," she said. "Once. I thought I imagined it. Someone crying. Under the floor." I didn't ask permission. I left the station and drove straight to the old Harper house. It had changed over the years, new paint, new owners, but the bones were still the same. Mara answered the door in a robe with a wine glass in hand. She didn't want to let me in. Said it was late. Said I should come back with a warrant. But I pushed past her. Walked into the garage. The floor was still unfinished, painted gray but uneven. In the far corner, under a rolled rug and a few boxes of Christmas lights, was the hatch, padlocked. She didn't say a word. I cut the lock with bolt cutters I'd brought in the trunk. The hinges groaned. The smell hit first earth mold, something sour beneath it all. I lowered myself down, feet on metal rungs, one hand on the flashlight. The space below was small, bare concrete. No windows, no furniture. Just a single maze etched into the wall, faint but deep. And in the center, the same slashed circle. On the floor, scratched into the surface, was a number, 45. I stood there for a long time listening. It was so quiet it made my ears ring. I climbed back up and called for backup. Mara didn't resist. She just sat on the couch and asked for a cigarette. Back at the station, Lily stood at the window. She didn't ask where we'd gone. She just whispered to herself, "If this is 45, then I was never the end." I didn't sleep that night. I stayed in my office with the lights off, reading through every name and timestamp in the old files. Diane sat across from me, holding the photo we took of the concrete floor. Her hands were shaking. She hadn't spoken much since we got back. Neither had Mara, who was in a holding cell 2 floors down, refusing a lawyer, humming softly to herself in a way that made the younger deputies uneasy. "She knew about the room," I said. Diane nodded. She knew. She was protecting someone, I added. Diane didn't speak right away. Then she said, "Not Lily." I looked at her. Who then? But she didn't answer. Lily hadn't said anything since the hatch. Evan sat outside her room, hunched in a chair with his head in his hands. I don't think he knew what he was waiting for. None of us did. We brought in a forensic team to sweep the Harper property again. They found something buried in the crawl space beneath the original foundation. Not human remains, but a box. Inside, drawing stuffed animals, scraps of notebooks, each marked with a number. 43, 44, 45, 46. The numbers were burned into leather tags and nailed to the inside of the crate. No blood, no fingerprints, just objects. As if someone had been keeping track. As if someone wanted to remember what they'd taken. I walked the perimeter of the yard. The new owners had replaced most of the fencing years ago, but one post in the back corner stood out, pressure-treated pine, not weathered like the rest. I pulled it loose. Underneath was a rusted padlock and a broken chain. I brought it back to the station and set it on the table in front of Lily. She didn't flinch, just looked at it and said, "I know that sound." "What sound?" I asked. "When the chain broke." She looked at me then. I was already gone. But I still heard it. The next morning, I requested the fire report again from the cabin site up north, the one we'd linked to Ray Halden. I wanted to check the file myself. The coordinates on the incident report didn't match the ones we entered the day of discovery. The coroner's notes had listed boots and a watch. But there was another detail. Red cloth melted into the floorboards. That detail never made it into the summary. I called the officer who had filed it. No answer. I called again. Still nothing. By late afternoon, I drove out to his house. He lived alone in Black Mountain, just outside the tree line. The porch light was on, but the mailbox was full. I looked through the kitchen window. A place setting for one. A candle burned halfway down. Inside, it smelled like rot. I kicked the door in. He was upstairs, neatly dressed. Pills on the nightstand. No note. Just a napkin folded once, pencil writing barely legible. The numbers go higher. Keep looking. I sat in the hallway after the medics arrived. Napkin still in my hand. Not fear in my chest. Something colder. Something that said this wasn't even close to over. When I got back to the station, Evan was waiting for me. Pacing, eyes wide. I remembered something he said. About Ray. I didn't interrupt, just waited. He used to say things when my mom wasn't around. Little things. He told me once that I wasn't meant for the middle, that it was meant for her. "Lily?" I asked. He nodded. I thought he was just being weird. I didn't think it meant anything. I looked at him for a long time, then said, "It always means something." I brought him into the interview room again. Lily didn't look at him at first. He sat across from her and leaned forward. "I should have told someone," he said. "I should have said it years ago." Lily's voice was flat when she answered. "You were a kid. That's not an excuse." She looked up then. "Then don't make it one." Diane stepped into the room with the preliminary psych report in her hand. She didn't read it aloud, just held it out for me to see. I scanned the notes. Signs of prolonged sensory deprivation. Deep behavioral conditioning. But one sentence stopped me. "She's not broken," it read. "She's organized." That scared me more than anything else, because it meant she hadn't survived by chance. She'd adapted, learned the system, played along, long enough to outlast it. And if she had done that, then what else had she carried out with her? I turned the paper over, wrote down the number 46, then underlined it, twice. Lily watched me do it. She didn't ask why. She already knew. We went back to the woods the next morning. This time, Lily led. Not like she was sure of where we were going, but like her body remembered things her mouth hadn't caught up to yet. She pointed to certain trees, not all of them, just the ones with faint red spray paint still clinging to the bark. She stepped over stones arranged like an arrow, touched a rusted pipe rising out of the soil with the edge of her shoe. Then she stopped. "It's here," she said. "We dug for 2 hours before we hit an old manhole rimmed in moss and bolts and concrete. When we pried it open, the smell came first earth and mildew, but also something harder to place. The tunnel was narrow dry in some places, dripping in others. It led north straight into the hillside. No lights, just concrete and cold and the echo of footsteps that never seemed to stop when yours did. I went in first. Diane followed. Lily came last, holding a flashlight low. We walked single file for almost 20 minutes before we came to a door. Heavy metal. Hinges like iron wrists. The number stenciled on it in flaking white paint. 47. We pushed it open. The room was square, empty except for a mattress in the corner, a toy truck missing its wheels, and on the wall another maze. Different this time. It had an entrance, and in the center, not one circle, but 2, side by side, both slashed through. Diane moved toward it. 2 centers. Lily stood behind us. "No," she said. "A split." "What do you mean?" "It means I wasn't alone." I turned to her. There was someone else in 43. She didn't answer right away. Her eyes were fixed on the wall. There were nights I'd wake up and someone else was breathing beside me, not touching, just there. "Did you ever see them?" She nodded. "Once. Maybe my age, maybe a little older. Thin. A scar across her forehead. She never spoke, but she used to hum." Diane turned. "What kind of hum?" Lily closed her eyes, and the sound that came out of her mouth wasn't a tune exactly, just a low, steady rhythm. Familiar. Too familiar. Diane froze. "That's the song Rachel hums in her cell." I didn't say anything. I just felt the hair rise on the back of my neck. When we got back to the station, we brought Rachel into the interview room. She was calm now, sedated maybe, or just resigned. When I asked her about the song, her face flickered. "It's nothing," she said. "Just a tune." "Where did you hear it?" Diane asked. Rachel looked down. "My mother." We paused. We'd always assumed Rachel's mother had died young, but there was no death certificate, no real record at all. "Tell me about your childhood," I said. Rachel shook her head. Then quietly, "My mother used to disappear. For days, sometimes longer. When she came back, she was different." "Did she ever take you with her?" Another pause. "There was a red door," she whispered. That night I searched through what was left of Rachel's old records. Most of it had been lost, misfiled, or burned in an archive fire in 2002. But one thing turned up, an old property deed in her maiden name. A farmhouse long abandoned on the far side of Leicester. I took Diane with me. We arrived before sunrise. The house looked like it was collapsing into the land. Ivy strangled the porch rails. The front door sagged on its hinges. Inside, dust hung in the air like insulation. Everything was faded except one thing, the cellar door, painted red. We broke the lock. The stairs led down to a concrete hallway, and at the end, another door. This one marked 42. Inside, the air was still, A cot, a broken fan, bare walls, and a polished steel plate hung like a mirror warped dull. Beneath it, another maze carved into the wall. This one, sloppier, angrier. At the center, not a symbol, a word. Remember. Diane stepped back, her voice barely audible. This was built for containment. I stepped toward the cot, pulled up the mattress. Underneath, papers, old photos, a VHS tape wrapped in cloth, and something else. A child's shoe. Pink. Small. About Lily's size when she vanished. I called her. Asked her to come. She didn't ask why. Just showed up and followed me down the stairs like she already knew the shape of them. She entered the room, slow, touched the steel mirror, stared at the maze. "This wasn't mine," she said. "But I know this place. I dreamed about that mirror for years." I handed her the shoe. She stared at it. "I never wore this," she said. Diane asked, "Then whose was it?" Lily's voice trembled. She called herself Claire. My breath caught. Claire. Lily nodded. She was the first one to draw the circle. "Do you remember her face?" She looked like my mother. We didn't move. Just stood there in that quiet room with the broken fan and the scratched wall and that single word pressed so deep into the concrete, it looked like it had cracked open the structure. "She used to whisper stories to me," Lily said. "When he wasn't listening." "Ray?" I asked. She shook her head. "Someone else. I never saw his face. He wore a mask, black, with holes over the mouth. He smelled like bleach." I didn't speak. Diane didn't either. "He called us by number," Lily continued. "But she called me Emily. Do you think Claire was Rachel?" Diane asked. Lily looked up. She was older, maybe 15, maybe 17, but her eyes, she paused. They were mine. Back at the station, I pulled every file I had on Rachel's early life. Most were sealed, but one document slipped through a juvenile psychiatric intake from 1993. First name Claire. No last name listed. Age 14. Diagnosis severe dissociation. Facility Asheville Children's Psychiatric. Duration 21 months. Released to private care under state supervision. No record after that. I stared at the intake date. March 2nd, 1993. Exactly 30 years before the day Lily walked into my station. I walked into the interview room. Rachel looked up like she'd been waiting. I placed the paper on the table. "Claire R.," I said. Rachel blinked. "I don't know who that is. You don't know." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't lean forward. I just said, "Because I think Claire R. was your sister. Or your daughter. Or maybe you." She didn't deny it. Not outright. She just looked down. "They called her the Middle," I said. She leaned back. Her voice changed flat now, mechanical. She was there before Ray. Before the tunnels. Before the numbers. They used her to test obedience. Isolation. She didn't speak for a year. "Was she your sister?" Diane asked. Rachel didn't look at her. "She was me," she said. Evan was outside the room listening through the glass. His mouth had fallen open. His hands were shaking. Lily didn't look surprised. Rachel kept going like someone reciting a story from memory, not emotion. They shut that place down, but not before it did what it was built to do. They fractured us, split us into pieces. Claire was just one of them. Rachel was what they called me when I got out. I asked her, was Ray part of it? She shook her head. "Ray wasn't born into our family. He was placed there, groomed. He came to us when I was 16, said he was my brother, my protector, but he was just one of them, a continuation." Evan's voice came over the intercom. "Then why did you let him take her?" Rachel's mouth trembled. "I didn't," she said. "I made a deal. And just like that, everything we thought we knew shifted again. Because it wasn't just about what happened to Lily. It was about the ones who stayed behind, and the price they paid to be left alone. She didn't look at me when she said it. Rachel just kept her eyes on the table and whispered, "They told me if I gave them just one child, they'd leave me alone for good." Diane sat still beside me, silent. I don't think either of us was breathing. I asked her what she meant by them. She didn't answer right away. Then she said, "The people from the program, the ones who ran it back then, they weren't all shut down." Her voice cracked a little, but she didn't stop. They came back. Different faces, same purpose. I asked her if she knew what they were doing to the children. She said I knew enough to look away. I thought that was the same as not knowing. I asked if she ever checked on Lily. She shook her head. That was the deal. I wasn't supposed to care. That was the condition. Then she looked at me and her voice changed emptier. But she wasn't supposed to remember. I stepped out of the room. Lily was standing in the hallway already. She'd heard everything. Her arms were crossed, but her fingers kept twitching at her sides. I asked her if she was okay. She said I wasn't the only one who made a deal. I led her to another room. Just the two of us. I asked what she meant. She sat down slow. "The girl in room 46, she said. Her name was Mara." The name hit harder than I expected. Not because of the mother, but because I remembered it from the old map, scribbled in pencil along the edge of one of the tunnels. "She was supposed to get out," Lily said. "But she got sick. They stopped feeding her. She couldn't walk anymore. Could barely stay awake." I asked what happened to her. Lily's voice went soft. "They said if I helped bury her, they'd let me go." Diane stepped in quietly behind me and sat down. Lily kept going. "They made me dig the hole. Said it had to be done that night. I thought she was already gone. But when they put her in the box, her fingers moved. Just barely. She opened her eyes for a second and said, 'Don't let them erase me.' Diane's hand covered her mouth. I couldn't speak. Lily looked down. So I came back. Not to tell my story. To tell hers. Later that night, I pulled the box from the farmhouse back out. The one we found under the mattress. The VHS tape was still wrapped in cloth. I hadn't watched it yet. Label was smeared nearly illegible, but one word stood out. Witness. I took it to the old AV deck in the evidence room and pressed play. The footage was grainy, black and white. A concrete room, a girl tied to a chair. Her hair was matted, her face thin, too young. A man's voice from off-screen said, "State your number." She didn't answer. He said it again, this time louder. She whispered, "Middle." Then came the sound, sharp, maybe a slap, maybe something else. "State your number," he repeated. She looked directly at the camera and smiled. 43. The screen went black. I sat there with the tape in my hands, feeling like the room had dropped 10 degrees. I couldn't explain it, but it didn't feel like just a recording. It felt like a message, a seed, something planted and left behind waiting to be found. I drove for a while after that. Just roads, no direction. Ended up on an overlook. Evan once mentioned a spot he and Lily had gone to as kids. I sat there watching the valley breathe, thinking about Rachel, about the people who built all this, who shaped it like a maze and buried children in the center, like they were experiments. I didn't go home that night, just came back to the station at dawn. Diane was already there. She was holding the last page of the Echo Seed file, something I hadn't noticed. In the bottom corner, a stamp replicated pending next generation. She didn't say anything, just handed it to me and walked away. Lily was in the back room drawing again. I peeked in. She didn't notice me. She was tracing lines. A maze again. But this one was different, more open. In the center, a house. 3 windows. One open. The others shut. I asked her what it meant. She didn't answer, just kept drawing. That afternoon, Rachel asked to see her. I wasn't sure. But Lily said, let her. So we let them sit in the interview room. No cuffs, no guards, just 2 chairs. Rachel looked smaller than before. Not older, reduced, like someone who'd finally run out of places to hide. Lily stared at her a long time, then said, "Do you know what I remember?" Rachel didn't speak. "I remember your voice. Through the walls, you used to hum when you thought no one could hear." Rachel's eyes filled, but she didn't look up. "I wasn't singing to you," I know Lily said, "but I listened anyway." "You lied," she continued, "and then you kept lying, even when I came back." Rachel's voice cracked. "I was broken." "You stayed broken," Lily said. Rachel opened her mouth, but nothing came out. "I want the truth," Lily said. "All of it." Rachel was quiet a long time. Then, almost too soft to hear, she said, "Your real name was supposed to be Claire." Lily froze. "I tried to name you after her," Rachel continued, "not for what they did to her, but for who she was before." Lily stood, walked to the door, then paused. "I don't forgive you," she said, "but I'm done carrying you." She left the room. Rachel didn't follow, just sat in the chair and cried, not loud, not for show, like someone mourning a version of herself that never made it out. That evening, Evan picked Lily up. They didn't tell anyone where they were going, just left town. They didn't say goodbye. They didn't have to. Some endings don't come with closure. Just quiet, just air, just the sound of 2 people stepping out of the middle and choosing not to come back. I didn't hear from Lily for 6 weeks. The station stayed quiet after she left. No new reports, no follow-up calls. Rachel pleaded guilty to obstruction and conspiracy. No trial, no appeal. She didn't speak again after the day Lily walked out of that room, just sat through the hearings like someone who'd already served her sentence in full. Diane stayed. She started a support program for long-term trauma recovery, small at first, then steady. She called it Room 46. Evan finished his degree late. He submitted a thesis titled The Geometry of Grief. I read it in one sitting. I didn't understand all of it, but I understood enough. It wasn't really about trauma. It was about the patterns that come after how the pieces of what survives never line up quite the way they used to. And me, I stepped down. Not because I was running, but because I didn't want to spend the rest of my life chasing something that was already inside me. That last file from Echo Seed still sits in a drawer at home. I don't open it anymore, not because I've forgotten, but because I finally learned how to carry it differently. Lily mailed 1 letter. No return address, just a drawing. Another maze, hand-drawn, folded twice. But this one was unlike any of the others. No numbers, no dead ends. In the center, a single open window. Underneath it, in her handwriting, "Sometimes surviving is the loudest revenge." I kept that letter. Framed it, actually. It's the only thing on my office wall now. Most people who visit don't know what it means, and I don't explain it. Some stories don't belong in headlines or documentaries or court records. Some stories are meant to be held quietly passed down without names, without noise, just memory and breath, and the knowledge that someone found their way out. In another town, a girl with the same eyes as Lily reads to children at the local library. No one knows where she came from, but the quiet ones sit closer when she talks. They watch her hands, her eyes, the way her voice never rises too high. And sometimes, when she's finished reading, she unfolds a sheet of paper, lays it flat on the table, and traces the path of a maze with her fingertip. Always toward the center. Always to the window. Not because she's trying to escape anymore, but because she remembers. And that's enough. If this story stayed with you, if it made you pause or feel or remember someone who vanished too quietly, consider sharing it. So no name, no room, and no number gets left behind.